Hello, beautiful people. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to your Spiritual Guru podcast. I'm your host and spiritual guru, Erin. I've been on my own spiritual journey for the past 2 years, and it's an honor to walk beside you as you navigate through your own. This podcast is for anyone who is wanting to do inner work, get more in tune with themselves, heal past traumas, and find their inner power. If that's you, then sit tight because this is going to get deep. You ready? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your Spiritual Guru podcast. If you are listening to this when the episode comes out, it is Friday, and I hope you've had an amazing week. I am actually recording this on Thursday, January 19th, and for those of you who are watching me on YouTube right now, you're probably wondering, why does she look like that? She looks crazy. I am not wearing any makeup. I know those of you who are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, y'all can't see me, but I don't have on any makeup. I usually, try to get somewhat dressed up when I record the podcast, but today, well, first of all, my skin has been super irritated from eczema and things like that. The weather has been hell on my skin lately, but that's one reason why I'm not wearing makeup, but it's just funny that the universe, everything seems to be aligning for me to just show up as my raw, authentic self for this episode. And I wanted to just be me. I want to show up as me. I wanted to be super vulnerable. Again, y'all that are listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can't see me, but I have on this big fluffy sweatshirt, hoodie. I have my wine. I just want to be super, super comfortable for this episode, and I'm going to invite y'all to do the same. If you have a comfort drink that you like, it doesn't have to be wine. It can be tea or water or what have you. Chocolate milk, hot chocolate. If it's cold, that sounds delicious. And then just get really comfortable if you're able to when you're listening to this. I know some people listen to the podcast on their way to work and from work, things like that. But if you're listening, somewhere where you can get super comfortable, put on some fuzzy socks, an article of clothing that makes you feel warm and cozy, or get under the covers, I'm going to invite you to do so, because this episode might be really hard for some people. I know it's going to be hard for me. It's going to be really hard for me to get through this episode, but I feel like what I have to say will bring comfort to a lot of people. And I'm going to try to keep it together for y'all. I might get emotional in some places, but I will try to keep it together for y'all. And if you hear a short break, I'm just taking a sip of my wine. But today, I'm going to be talking about some traumas that I've experienced. What brought this up, especially right now, is a very recent call that I went on at work. And before I go any further, I want to mention that in this episode, there will be mention of death and physical assault. So if that's something that is a trigger for you, if you're not quite ready to hear that, or if you don't want to hear that, and you have to skip over this episode, I completely understand. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I want you to make sure that you're taking care of you and, staying within your limits of what you can handle, right? But for those of you who don't know, I am an EMT. I work on the ambulance, and I've been an EMT for 3 years. It's a job that I've wanted to have. It's a profession that I've wanted to be in since I was in high school. Okay. And they never really tell you or prepare you for the fact that when you're in a profession like this, first responder, hospital scene, what have you, you're going to have to face a lot of your own traumas, because you're going to see that trauma in other people, right? Especially with what I do. I see people in their homes most of the time. I see them on the worst days of their life in some cases, right? And I have two instances of trauma that I want to share with y'all. The first one, I think what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning where that first trauma kind of affected my work now. And then I'm going to share with you the most recent one that kind of brought this podcast to light, this episode. And for those of you who are not in the profession that I am, you're not a first responder, you don't work in a hospital, what have you, that's fine. I feel like you will still get little nuggets from this episode, or you will be able to relate it to your own life. Mothers who are parenting, people who have gone through things, whatever it is, I feel like you're going to be able to relate to what I'm saying, even though the profession may not, relate to your life. Okay. Now, this trauma that I'm going to tell y'all about, I've kind of already given y'all a little insight to it, but I don't think I've shared the whole story with y'all. And this is something that I haven't really told a lot of people. And it's not because I'm ashamed of it. I think it's just, for me, I've turned it into a positive, but I think for some people hearing it might be a little harsh. So I kind of keep it to myself, but it's the story of when my mom passed. Okay. I was 17 years old. I was in high school. This ties into my profession because in high school, I was in an emergency responder class. It was my favorite class. This is where I knew that I wanted to do this work, right? I knew that it was something that I was interested in. And in that class, we learned all of the basics to be an emergency first responder. Basically an EMT, but back then it was called EMR, or I think it was EMT intermediate, like the level right before basic, which is what I am. And I loved that class. It's my favorite class. I felt like it was the class that I learned the most in. I felt like I really knew what I was doing. I was understanding all of the material. Like I was immersed in the class. So, to paint the picture for y'all, I was 17. I was in high school. I woke up one morning, February 9th, 2010, and my mom was supposed to do my hair that morning. She did a French braid in the back, and that's how I wanted my hair for school that morning. And I wake up, I'm getting ready for school like I normally do, getting something to eat, some cereal probably, putting on my makeup, and I'm saving my hair for last because, I'm just going to do my hair and get out the door, go wait for the bus. And something just felt off because while me, my sibling, and my mom all had our own separate rooms, and we would normally, keep the doors closed, I would always usually see the light underneath my mom's door. Even if she hadn't come out of the room yet, like I would know that she was up. But I didn't see the light. And I opened the door, and the room is still dark. And her radio alarm is still going off. It's still playing. And I thought to myself, that's weird. And so I go over to her bed, and try to wake her up. And of course, she doesn't wake up. And in that moment, I knew that she had passed in her sleep. This is where it ties into my work. Because I feel like any rational, normal human being who has just found their mother, passed away in her sleep and in her bed would freak the fuck out, right? Like, just be hysterical, like lose their ever loving shit. But I didn't. In that moment, something just, it was like instantaneous. It just, boom, snap. I went immediately into working. I was like, okay, I gotta roll mom over on her back. We gotta open up her airway. I gotta start CPR. I called my sibling into the room. My sibling had the normal reaction that I would expect other people to have when they found out that their mom passed. And I looked at them, I said, Mom is not breathing. I need your help to roll her over. They just went hysterical. They were like, they had a granola bar in their hand. The granola bar ended up halfway down the hall, just fall out on the floor crying, like what I would expect, right? What anybody would expect. I looked at them, I said, I know you're upset and I know you're scared, but I need your help. We have to move mom over on her back. And it just happened so quickly. Unfortunately, when we were able to get mom on her back, I couldn't open her airway because, that's how long she had been down. And by that time, paramedics were already on their way and family were on their way. But it was the fact that in that moment, I went immediately into trying to work my mom, right? So before, I had known that this is what I wanted to do, or that it was at least an interest of mine. I knew that it was a possibility. But in that moment, that's when I knew I had what it takes to do this job, right? And afterwards is when, kind of the emotions and everything, I was able to kind of decompress and come down from that adrenaline high, that work mode. But that affected my job afterwards because I would get very triggered when we would go to someone's house on a call that, went out as someone unresponsive or, someone not waking up, cold to the touch. And I already knew what it was going to be when we got there. But it was always harder when that person was in their bed. And I didn't think about that before I got into the profession. I didn't think about how that trauma that I experienced would carry on into my work, right? And that was made clear a few days ago when I was at work. So now we're fast forwarding, so from 2010 to present day, right? As y'all know, I was in a very emotionally, mentally abusive relationship for 5 years with the father of my child. Okay. There was an instance, kind of, I want to say this was maybe year 2, maybe even 3, going on 3 of our relationship. And we had both been drinking that night. And with my ex, it was always a toss-up who I was going to get when he drank. He was either going to be very open and tell a lot of stories, and I felt like I was able to get to know him more and like understand him or he was going to be an angry drunk, right? So that night, it was the latter. We started fighting. I can't even remember what the fight was about. But I think at one point, I must have said, get out of my house, blah, blah, blah. Because, mind you, it was my apartment. My name was on the lease. I was allowing him to stay there. But, said, blah, 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 get out of my house. Something along those lines. Well, we were in the living room. I had kneeled down to, I think, unplug my TV. Yes, I was petty back then. We all have things that we, chapters in our life that we're not proud of. I was very, very petty back then. I was trying to unplug my TV or something that I had to reach, kneel down to get to the ground for. He was still standing up, right? He takes the bottom of his foot and shoves me to the ground, not kicking me like you're gonna kick a soccer ball, but almost like you would take the palm of your hand and shove somebody's shoulder, but he used the bottom of his foot, if y'all can visualize that. That was the first time that I became frightened of him. So much so that I called the police. This is also the first time that I really got to witness how manipulative my ex could be. Because he was talking to the cops and somehow made me out to be the crazy one. Even though we'd both been drinking, I was stating that he shoved me, he put his hands on me, basically, even though it was his foot, but he used bodily force on me, right? But I was the crazy one. Nothing was done that night. I told the cops that I wanted him to leave. They said that there's nothing that they could do because in the state of Georgia, if he's lived there and he receives mail there, he has 30 days to vacate. There has to be all that stuff. That part didn't bother me as much because I know they were just doing their job and there's legalities. There's things that there are things that were out of their control. What bothered me the most was that no one believed me. Right? And so, a few days ago, I'm at work and we get a call for someone having suicidal ideations. And when you hear a call being dispatched, I don't know about most people, but for me, I kind of create a vision in my head of what I could possibly be going into just based off of the information that they're giving me. Sometimes it's absolutely nothing like what I pictured. And that time was like that, right? So I'm picturing somebody that's maybe alone at their house and, they're at their wit's end. That's what I'm picturing. We don't even know the gender, the age, nothing. Just someone experiencing suicidal ideation. So we get there and it's actually a man and a woman, a married couple. And the guy is outside and he's the patient, right? And the cops are already there on scene because with any of those, police have to go on scene to clear it and deem it safe for us to enter. So the cops are already talking to him. And since he's the patient, he's the first person that we're going to talk to, make sure that he's okay. He's not, wanting to cause harm to himself or others or anything like that. And if you know me and you've listened to the podcast, I am a very, very good reader of people. I can kind of get a sense of someone's essence within minutes moments of meeting someone, right? And so I'm listening to him explain the situation. The cops are asking him, so what happened tonight? What's going on? And the words that he's using and the way he's evading questions and not really answering the question that's asked of him, or beating around the subject and just trying to make it seem like he's not really the one that is the problem. I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing this. So I told my partner, I said, I'm going in there to talk to the wife. And just the whole situation, it was crazy to me because up until that moment, I hadn't thought of that trauma with my ex for years. I hadn't thought about it. But in that moment, seeing how smug and just arrogant and just basically full of shit this dude was, and then hearing his, like, everything just flooded back to me. And I remembered everything as if it happened yesterday. Something that I hadn't thought about in years just all came bubbling up on the surface, right? But I have a job to do, right? I took an oath. I, have to give everybody the same level of care. So we ended up taking him to the hospital, to be evaluated. And my whole purpose for sharing these experiences with y'all is to help, I want to share with y'all what helped me when this happened to me, when those traumas and triggers came about, so that hopefully when it happens to you, you can take from what I'm telling you and use it in your personal life. So going back to my mom, when I have those calls where I have to, see that someone has passed in their bed, and it brings that same feeling, that experience that day to the surface, one thing always happens. I'll get back in my truck, my ambulance, and on the radio we'll be playing one of two songs that I rarely ever hear them on the radio, ever. It'll be either Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, or it'll be Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. Those two songs were two of my mom's favorite songs, and we would sing them together all the time. And so when that happens, I know she's telling me that she's with me. She's watching me, and everything's going to be okay. And for me, now that I've told you all that, I've told you all those songs, maybe when you hear them, you'll think of my mom. And that's what helps me, keeping her memory alive. And knowing that because of that experience, I went into this profession and I'm able to help people on their worst days. And if it wasn't for that, who knows if that would have been the case. So it's basically a matter of finding the good in the situation, right? Finding I hate, well, I won't say hate, that's a strong word. I dislike, especially when someone passes or dies, when people say, well, everything happens for a reason. Yes, in some instances, yes. But I think in that moment, instead of everything happens for a reason, you can find meaning in what has happened, right? You can find comfort. And so with the instance that just happened recently, with, my trauma being brought up in my recent call, for me, I was really proud of myself because I didn't let it affect my work. I didn't let it affect how I treated my patient. I didn't, lose my cool on scene or anything like that. But I think coming full circle, I think the good or the meaning in that exchange or that experience was that I was able to be the person that I needed when I was experiencing my trauma for his wife. I was able to say, hey, I believe you. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Even if nobody else saw what was going on, even if he had everybody else fooled, I was able to say, I believe you. And hopefully that gave her some comfort. So knowing that I was able to be the person that I needed for someone else, I'm okay with that. Even though it did bring up a really deep-seated trauma for me. Something that I'm actually grateful came to the surface because now I'm able to work through it and find the meaning and find the good and release it, right? So, for those of you who have experienced trauma, whether it's from your childhood, from a significant other, from work, what have you, my advice to you and what has helped me is to find the meaning, find the good, find the comfort. Because just like with those songs, keeping my mom's memory alive, her spirit will always be alive. And just like with my call, I'm able to be the person that I needed when I was going through my trauma for someone else. So, I'm going to end this episode with a quote that I've seen kind of like circulating through Facebook. I don't know if it has an author or, I don't know who said it originally, but it goes like this. It's okay if you thought you were over it, but it hits you all over again. And it's okay to fall apart even after you thought you had it all under control. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are healing. And healing is messy. Healing takes time. Until we meet again, namaste.